Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing the latest revelations about unlawful lockdown breaking parties at Downy Street, and on this occasion, one that is impossible for Boris Johnson to deny knowledge of, that paradoxically he's going to have to. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So really awkward timing on this story because it broke later on Monday. From Monday afternoons all the way through Tuesday. I can't do anything here, so it always has to wait till Wednesday morning. And I'm very conscious of the fact that this video comes out just as PMQs will be starting, and there's no way that this scandal won't be at least part of the focus of the questions for Boris Johnson. Not least of which because he did not turn up to Parliament yesterday to answer questions about it, nor did any ministers attend television interviews this morning either. They were all pulled because, as you can see, they didn't want to say something that will contradict a lie that Boris Johnson has to tell Parliament this afternoon, because that's what's going on here. This morning, Boris Johnson will have spent time with his advisors trying to work out the best line for what is now completely indefensible. And when you're working out your lies in the morning, you can't afford for a few hours earlier for one of your cabinet ministers to have said something that's going to contradict it. But anyway, I was just going to leave it until the PMQ's review tomorrow, because this means basically it's going to be the same topic, basically 2 videos in a row. But there's so much to this that I didn't want to keep going off on a tangent in that video tomorrow, when I need to focus more on what the questions were and what the responses were and my thoughts on that. So, the Downing Street parties. Now, for those who don't know, an email trail this time has been leaked, which shows the Prime Minister's principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds, inviting more than 100 people to a bring your own booze party in the evening of May the 20th, 2020, during the first lockdown. As an amusing aside, Reynolds originally came from the Foreign Office. He was ambassador to Libya, apparently. And it's almost certain that he's going to lose his position over this affair. Because, you know, the people who lose their positions are the ones implicated in the leaks, not the people who actually went to the parties. And he will have been acting on explicit instructions from Johnson as well. Explicit instructions, because that's his job. But a report said that he was keen to return to the Middle East. Now consider what that means. Going to the Middle East as a British diplomat is preferable to being anywhere near Boris Johnson. What a world we live in. But the serious side of this is that Johnson cannot claim to have not known about this now. A huge guest list. Even though most didn't actually attend, and from Johnson's own secretary, acting on his instructions. There was an urgent question in Parliament yesterday about it, as I say, and Labour's Angela Rayner presented it, and as she stood up, Conservative MPs fled the chamber like rats from a sinking ship. As Rayner started to speak, there were barely more than a dozen Tory MPs left. It seems nobody wanted to really try and defend this nonsense, although I did notice Michael Fabricant, the party's resident scarecrow, gave it a bash in a television interview. During the proceedings, one MP, Sir Christopher Chope, tried to say, well, why this constant drip of these revelations? Why don't we just get it all over and done with? The reason, of course, is from Boris Johnson's point of view, as it notes here, on the one hand, he cannot just go, right, look, we've been discovered, let's just make a clean break of it, admit to it all and all the rest of it, because it was unlawful behaviour. There could be criminal investigations required here. The police so far have been doing him a solid and going, oh, there's not enough evidence. If the Prime Minister admits that this law breaking went on, the police have nowhere else to go. They have to investigate. At the same time, it's deeply politically damaging, which is what Chope's going on about. And from the point of view people leaking it, because obviously Boris Johnson's not leaking it, the reason is because it keeps catching him out. When news first broke of lockdown breaking parties, Johnson denied that any parties had taken place. When a video was leaked with Downing Street staffers joking about it, Boris Johnson had to switch from the parties didn't take place to, well, I didn't know about them. These parties in my own house. When a photograph emerged of him hosting a Christmas jolly, he then tried to deny that it was breaking the rules. Because at this point, he can't deny knowledge of these events because he was in them, photographed in them. So it's like, oh yeah, but it didn't break the rules. Even though it's clear to anyone who looks up the rules, it did. But that's Johnson's tactic. Try and change what the rules were, because most people, let's be honest, aren't going to look them up. So they tried redefining what a party was, as if the law just banned parties. They didn't. They banned gatherings, even for the purposes of work. You didn't just get to say, oh yeah, but it was for work. Even for the purposes of work, you still were not allowed to have gatherings. You had to do it all remotely, unless you could show that the close contact was essential for work. Christmas quiz is not essential for work. Then we had the photo of Boris Johnson, his soon-to-be wife, and a load of Downy Street staff, including Dominic Cummings, knocking back wine in the summer of 2020 during the lockdown. Again, they tried to claim it was a work meeting. It wasn't a work meeting. There were no notebooks, there were no pens, there were no tablets, there were no laptops. What there was a load of wine. And again, the rules at the time wouldn't have allowed it for work anyway, even if there were netbooks and notebooks and all the rest of it. It still would have been banned. Because the same thing applied. You were expected to do these. If it was possible to do your work remotely, you were expected to. Discussing things, talking about things, of course you can do that remotely. You know, and who really thinks it's work when the Prime Minister's girlfriend's there and they've all got a load of wine? But as each revelation came out, Johnson made one of two defences. You know, he could attempt to deny that there was anything wrong with it because it was connected to work. Sure that most of his judges amongst the public don't actually know what the rules were anyway. And if that didn't work, if it was clearly a social event and there's no way of trying to link it to work, he would deny any knowledge of it. That is why, for Chope, who seems to be oblivious to political intrigue, these revelations have been fed out a bit at a time. It's to get Johnson to deny responsibility in a specific way that covers the piece of evidence that's just come out. And then you bring out another piece of evidence that completely sinks that specific defence. After the video of staff laughing about the party, I did say at the time, is Johnson even considering that there may be more proof to emerge? And I still don't know whether he considered it or not, but more and more damning proof does keep emerging. And even this latest one may not be the last. Of course, it's also certain that more than one person is leaking the details as well. That may go some way to understanding why the leaks are taking place over such a long time. But they are politically ruinous to Johnson. First, there's now absolute proof that Boris Johnson knew about these parties, because he explicitly denied knowledge about them in Parliament. On more than one occasion, we now have proof that he lied in Parliament. I mean, we did before. But even Tory MPs know he can't brazen this one out because it's of such public interest. Here's the thing. There was a Tory MP who did a television interview, not a minister, Tory MP, a backbencher, and they were asked, should Boris Johnson resign? And they said they didn't know. Now the rules are very clear. This isn't a matter of opinion, by the way. It's not like, well, if the Prime Minister lied in Parliament, yes, they should resign, as if it's a matter of opinion. It's in the rules. They're supposed to resign. This Tory MP is betting on the fact that it's less politically damaging to him to say that he doesn't know the rules of probity for MPs and ministers than it is to try and say that Boris Johnson may not be guilty, because that's gone now. You know, Douglas Ross, the Scottish Conservative leader, has said that, if Johnson's guilty of lying, that he needs to resign. And some other MPs have said that as well. You know, like I've said before, this isn't an ordinary rules breaking. This is people who died alone because their loved ones weren't allowed to be with them in their final moments. Or there's only 10 people allowed at a funeral, so many others missed out on paying their respects. And the person who told them they couldn't be with their dying friends and relatives, the person who told them that they couldn't go to their funeral, was Boris Johnson. The same Boris Johnson who seems to have been partying at least twice a week, lockdown or not. In fact, another Labour MP in Parliament yesterday, Angela Eagle, asked if the inquiry would not be quicker if Sue Gray just investigated the days when there wasn't a party. But every time there's a new revelation, not only is it more damaging than the one before it, but because it keeps putting the issue back into the public conversation, it's damaging the Conservatives more and more. And this is why Labour are making sure that the Conservatives in general take advantage. Like some are querying, why don't more of the Labour front bench specifically, explicitly call for Johnson to resign? Well, that's because when he's inevitably forced out, all the blame would go with him then, because you're putting all the focus on Boris Johnson. This is Boris Johnson's law breaking. Labour don't need to beat Boris Johnson at the next election. He is now politically a dead man walking. They need to beat whoever replaces him, whoever's left. Labour are presenting the situation as this. Boris Johnson is clearly unfit to be Prime Minister. Boris Johnson has no honour and will not step down, so calling for it is pointless. But Conservative MPs have the power to force him to step down. Labour don't. Conservatives do. So because Boris Johnson has not stepped down, that means most Conservative MPs are supporting his actions. QED. And it doesn't matter how many Tory MPs try and hide away from the questions on this, or even accept that it's a disgrace, if they haven't put in their letters to Sir Graham Brady and publicly said so, to announce their loss of confidence in Johnson, then they are saying that the behaviour was acceptable, even if they hide away so they don't have to say anything. Have you announced your lack of confidence in Johnson's leadership? If not, then you are saying you're still confident in him. In fact, Labour have already been targeting some vulnerable Tory seats with social media ads pointing out how the resident Conservative MP has been defending Johnson in Parliament. In fact, it would almost be amusing at the moment for Starmer to actually issue a vote of no confidence in Johnson, because it's impossible to deny that Johnson knew of these events now. He's probably doing so at the moment in PMQs, still trying to deny it, but there is no denial. So that vote of no confidence would force Conservative MPs one of two options. Either vote with Labour to oust their leader, unthinkable, or defend Johnson, even with this latest proof, which could be used against them at the next election. But as amusing as it would be to watch them squirm, I don't think Starmer's going to do that, because there's probably more mileage in letting Tory MPs flap about like wet hens while Labour keep pointing out to voters that if they were really appalled by this behaviour, Johnson would be gone by now. And finally, when Johnson does go, Labour will still be able to make use of this scandal. And I don't just mean because they'll be able to point out how Tory MPs in vulnerable seats allowed Johnson to continue for X amount of months, whatever it ends up being. But consider this, the parties were at 10 Downing Street. Now 10 Downing Street is traditionally the residence of the Prime Minister, and 11 Downing Street next door the residence of the Chancellor. But in reality, Boris Johnson lives in the flat of 11 Downing Street, Rishi Sunak is in the flat of number 10. So any parties being held at number 10, and it sounds like there were a lot of them with a lot of people and they were very boisterous. It's quite clear there were a lot of these parties at number 10, and at least some of them must have been noticed by the Chancellor while he was there. Rishi Sunak is thoroughly implicated in these parties, even if he wasn't directly involved. There's no way he couldn't have known about them happening in the same house where he officially lives. And that will hopefully lead into PMQs, which I'll catch up with tomorrow. But those are my thoughts for now. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.